Usually, a daily devotion is meant to bring peace. You close your eyes, take a breath, and just sort of consciously retreat from all the chaos of the world.
Right. It's supposed to be this very gentle, centering experience.
Exactly, something that lowers your heart rate.
Yeah.
But today's source material completely shatters that expectation.
Oh, it really does.
We are looking at a singular, incredibly intense document today. It's titled The Invocation of St. Michael the Archangel. And our mission for this deep dive is to basically decode the vivid imagery, the strategic framing, and the structural mechanics of this text.
Because, I mean, let's be honest, it does not read like a comforting meditation at all.
Not even a little bit. It reads like a literal tactical battle plan for a war that is like happening right outside your window.
So, okay, let's unpack this.
That contrast is actually the perfect place to start, because whether you approach this from a theological angle or historical or even just purely literary, it's a fascinating study.
Yeah. It's essentially a masterclass in how abstract concepts of good and evil are personified and then localized and ultimately weaponized through language.
Weaponize is a great word for it.
Right. It constructs this massive narrative of cosmic warfare, but it insists that this war is actively playing out right here on Earth. And the way it demands your participation as the reader is entirely unique.
And that actually brings us to the very first line of the source material. It sets up this highly specific rule of engagement before the actual prayer even begins.
Oh, the instruction at the top?
Yeah, the text says, quote, repeat this prayer 40 times to reap the benefits. And I have to say, that immediately caught me off guard.
Just very direct.
It really is. It reminds me of a medical prescription.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Well, you can't just take a fraction of an antibiotic and expect the infection to clear up. You have to take the full course at the exact dosage for the chemical mechanism to actually work.
Right, yeah.
Or it's like a highly specific combination lock. It views the invocation as this mechanical tool that requires an exact numerical application to unlock whatever the desired outcome is.
And by doing that, it strips away any sense of passivity. In many historical and theological traditions, the number 40 symbolizes a rigorous period of testing or endurance.
Like 40 days in a desert, that kind of thing.
Exactly, or 40 years of wandering. By demanding this specific repetition, the text forces the person reciting it into a state of intense mental discipline.
So you aren't just casually asking the universe for a favor.
No, not at all. You are entering a cognitive endurance test. The repetition itself is the mechanism that shifts your mindset from, casual observer to active combatant.
Wow. It literally turns the person speaking into a soldier following a rigorous drill.
Precisely.
And once that discipline is established, we are introduced to the commander of this operation. The text invokes St. Michael, but it specifically calls him the glorious prince of the heavenly host.
Which is very telling language.
It really bypasses any idea of like a gentle, heart-playing angel on a cloud.
Oh, absolutely. It establishes a strict military hierarchy right out of the gate. In archaic translations, that word host literally refers to an army.
Right.
So he is the supreme commander of a celestial military force. But notice how the text justifies calling upon him for this specific assignment. It actually provides a detailed historical backstory.
Yeah, I noticed that. The speaker is instructed to remind him, quote, already thou hast fought the leader of the proud angels, Lucifer, and his apostate host, who are powerless to resist thee.
It's a very specific recounting of events.
But wait, I have to ask about the logic of that. Why spend time reminding an immortal supreme commander of his own resume?
It does seem a bit redundant on the surface.
Right. Like, he obviously knows he won that battle. Is it just to flatter him before asking for help?
Well, it actually serves a vital psychological function for the person reciting the text rather than the entity being addressed.
Oh, really? For the reciter?
Yes. Think about it. If you are preparing to face what the text calls a terrible warfare, starting your recitation by recounting a past, absolute victory anchors your current fear in a proven success.
Oh, I see. It systematically builds your confidence.
Exactly. You are essentially declaring, we are facing a terrifying enemy today, but it is the exact same enemy you already rendered completely powerless in the past.
So it establishes a precedent of total victory before the current battle is even really engaged.
It functions like a psychological anchor. You are reminding yourself of the winning record to stave off panic.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because a military commander is only as significant as the threat they are facing, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And the way this text profiles the enemy completely subverts what I expected. I think most people default to the medieval caricature.
You mean the red monster with horns?
Yeah, exactly. The cloven hooves, the pitchfork, standing in a lake of fire.
Right, the classic visual shorthand for evil that we see in pop culture.
But the text describes something far more insidious than that. It does start by calling him the cruel ancient serpent and the primeval enemy.
But then it pivots.
It does. It reveals his primary operational tactic. It says he wanders the earth, quote, transformed into an angel of light. And I really struggle with the mechanics of this.
How so?
Well, if the enemy is doing good deeds or appearing holy and looking like an angel of light to trick people, how is the person reciting this even supposed to identify the threat?
That's the terrifying part.
It makes the warfare about complex deception rather than brute force.
What's fascinating here is that this camouflage is the core mechanism of the theology presented. The danger outlined isn't physical destruction, It is cognitive and spiritual subversion.
Okay, so how does it say he actually attacks?
Well, the text describes a wicked dragon pouring out a most impure flood of venom. But look closely at the composition of that venom.
It isn't literal fire or acid.
Right. The weapons deployed are entirely psychological and moral. The text lists them as the spirit of lying, of impiety, of blasphemy, and the pestilent breath of impurity.
Oh, wow. So it frames the threat as like an atmospheric corruption.
Yes, exactly.
It's like a biological weapon,
Yes.
but designed specifically for the mind. It infects the environment itself.
And notice who it targets. The text notes this venom specifically targets men of depraved mind and corrupt heart.
Oh, so it's actively seeking out existing vulnerabilities, probing for cracks in human psychology to exploit.
Exactly. And that completely explains the functional necessity of the angel of light camouflage.
Because if he looked like a monster, we'd run away.
Right. The text frames human souls as the ultimate high-value asset, describing them as destined for the crown of eternal glory. If the enemy appeared as a terrifying monster, humans would naturally recognize the threat and fortify their defenses.
That makes total sense. By appearing as something noble or righteous, the enemy lowers those psychological defenses.
Making it far easier to, as the text states, seize upon, slay, and cast into eternal perdition those souls. The stakes are profoundly intimate.
Yeah, imagine reciting this 40 times a day. You aren't just collateral damage in some sweeping cosmic war. Your own mind is the active target of a master of disguise.
It makes it incredibly personal.
But then the text executes this really jarring structural shift. It moves from this global atmospheric infection, wandering the earth, seducing the whole world, to a highly specific earthly institutional target.
Right. It zooms way in.
It says the enemy stops prowling the perimeter and actually enters the church, the spouse of the Immaculate Lamb.
The perspective goes from the macro scale of the universe directly down to the micro scale of an earthly institution.
And he uses some very intense language there, too.
It claims these crafty enemies have inebriated with gall and bitterness the church. And the choice of the word inebriated is critical here.
Why is that?
Well, they haven't just attacked the exterior walls with a battering ram. They have poisoned the system from the inside, impairing its judgment and making it literally drunk on bitterness.
And they bypass the lower ranks completely. The text says they have set up their throne of impiety right in the holy place itself.
Yes, specifically noting the location.
Right, where the See of Holy Peter and the Chair of Truth has been set up.
Yeah.
To use a modern equivalent, this isn't like a hacker trying to breach a firewall from the outside.
No, not at all.
This is a catastrophic cybersecurity breach where the enemy has already stolen the highest level admin credentials and is currently operating directly from the main server room.
That concept of an internal systems breach captures the severity perfectly. The text outlines what military strategists would call a classic asymmetric decapitation strike.
A decapitation strike.
Yes. It explicitly states that their iniquitous design is based on the premise that, quote, when the pastor has been struck, the sheep may be scattered.
Strike the pastor, scatter the sheep. I mean, it's a ruthlessly efficient strategy. But why is the structural leadership the primary target?
Why not target everyone?
Yeah, why not just spend resources targeting the followers directly to maximize casualties?
Because taking out the center of authority causes the entire structural integrity to organically collapse.
Oh, I see.
If an opposing force targets the followers individually, they are forced to fight millions of localized individual battles.
Which is terribly inefficient.
Exactly. However, if they compromise the source of truth, the chair of truth, as the document names it, the followers naturally scatter because their navigational compass is broken.
That is wild. The theology embedded in this text views the highest seat of the institution as the absolute critical vulnerability in this ongoing cosmic war.
It does.
So, with the enemy sitting on a throne in the command center and the structural integrity actively being shattered, the tension reaches its absolute peak.
It's the climax of the document.
And visually, on the page, the document completely fractures at this exact moment. It stops being a sweeping, descriptive monologue and suddenly switches to a call-and-response format.
Right, you start seeing the letters V and R.
Yeah, lines marked with a V for versicle and an R for response.
It represents a profound shift in the mechanics of the invocation. To fully understand how this operates, you really have to imagine the auditory environment this type of text was designed for.
Like in a physical space.
Yes. In a large cathedral or maybe a monastic setting, a single voice, usually the leader or officiant, calls out the versicle into the echoing space. Behold the cross of the Lord. Be scattered, ye hostile powers.
And then the entire congregation, which could be hundreds of people, thunders back the response in unison. The Lion of the tribe of Judah has conquered, the Root of David.
The auditory shift must be just incredible to experience.
Oh, it would be goosebumps. The solitary reciter suddenly merges into a massive communal unit. It feels exactly like a military cadence, where the drill instructor calls out a line and the whole platoon shouts the response back. It synchronizes everyone in the room.
It binds the participants into a collective offensive formation. And observe the specific imagery utilized in this response.
The Lion of Judah.
Yes, they do not invoke a shield or a fortress or a sanctuary to hide in. They invoke an apex predator.
A universal symbol of royal authority and, unstoppable aggression.
Right. The text transitions from detailing a defensive posture into a full, unapologetic offensive push.
It demands a permanent end to the conflict. The final plea asks the God of peace to completely neutralize the threat.
They aren't looking for a temporary ceasefire.
Not at all. The goal isn't just to win a localized skirmish. They ask God to put Satan under our feet and to vanquish the dragon, making him captive in the abyss that he may no longer seduce the nations.
They want him locked up.
They want the master of disguise locked in a cage permanently, just taken off the board entirely. So what does this all mean for the mechanics of the prayer itself?
Well, achieving that permanent subjugation requires navigating a very precise chain of command.
Right, the final paragraph.
In the closing sequence, the supplicants do not merely shout their demands directly into the void. They direct their plea to God the Father, but they explicitly route their request through two distinct intercessors.
Mary and St. Michael.
Yes. They ask for intervention by Mary, ever Virgin Immaculate, and our Mother, alongside the glorious St. Michael the Archangel.
Okay, so you have the ultimate maternal protective figure paired with the ultimate tactical military commander.
It's quite the combination.
Both are utilized to basically carry the petition up to the highest authority. It's a highly coordinated dual-front approach designed to secure overwhelming divine intervention.
If we connect this to the bigger picture and pull back to look at the architecture of this document as a whole, the intellectual and emotional journey it mandates is staggering.
It really is a massive journey for a single text.
It moves a person from a clinical numerical instruction of 40 repetitions through a sweeping cosmic history of fallen angels and ancient dragons.
Then it funnels that massive scale down into a tactical espionage scenario occurring inside a specific church seat.
Right, before finally erupting into a synchronized communal rallying cry to permanently lock away the darkness.
It packs an entire framework of spiritual warfare, historical precedent, and tactical strategy into just a single sequence of words.
It certainly does. And the text anchors its urgency in the claim that humanity was created immortal, made in the divine image, and redeemed at a great price.
Those are incredibly high stakes.
Which leads me to something for you, the listener, to explore on your own. Consider the profound psychological weight of actively maintaining this specific worldview.
Yeah, think about that daily reality.
What does it fundamentally do to a person's daily mindset, to their minute-by-minute perception of reality, when they are instructed to recite 40 times a day that their very soul is a priceless, immortal asset caught in the crossfire of an ancient, ongoing war between a glorious prince and a primeval master of deception?
Wow. It turns every single choice, every mundane interaction, into a critical move on a cosmic chessboard. That is definitely something to mull over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Welcome to the deep dive. Imagine for a second you're holding this highly classified tactical military map.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right, so it outlines the specific ranks of an invading enemy. It details the sophisticated campaign of psychological warfare, and it warns of an imminent decapitation strike aimed directly at your command center.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly intense.
It really does. You'd probably assume this document was drafted by a modern intelligence agency, right? Like someone analyzing a global superpower. But this map wasn't drawn by a general. It's real-world source material from a religious text. It's the famous and honestly incredibly intense invocation of Saint Michael the Archangel.
Exactly. And the language and structure of this text, it goes way beyond a simple plea for daily protection. We are looking at this deeply layered architectural framework of a perceived spiritual war.
Right, and there's a pretty wild backstory here regarding why this was even written, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole reason this text exists is rooted in this terrifying historical anecdote. So the story goes that Pope Leo XIII actually overheard a conversation between Jesus and Satan.
Like, he literally overheard them talking, like physically heard it.
Yeah, according to the accounts, he had this profound vision or auditory experience where Satan basically asked Jesus for 100 years to destroy the church.
100 years.
Right, just 1 century of elevated power to try and completely dismantle it. And essentially the response was, go ahead, try.
Wow, that's a massive, terrifying detail.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that specific experience, that overheard conversation, is what propelled Pope Leo XIII to actually pen this famous exorcism prayer. The mission of our deep dive today is to unpack that. We need to look at the psychological strategy embedded in the text he wrote right after that vision.
So we're really digging into how the authors and the Pope understood the shifting nature of cosmic threats, right?
Exactly. Why they believed the battlefield had evolved from a physical clash to intellectual seduction and what defensive mechanisms they prescribed to survive it.
Because if you're reading this text today, whether you approach it purely as a fascinating piece of historical literature or, as a profound, active spiritual practice, the sheer power of the imagery is undeniable.
Oh, for sure. It's visceral.
It doesn't treat the concept of darkness as some vague, abstract idea. It treats it as an active, highly organized siege. I mean, the invocation starts by establishing the combatants, and it is highly specific.
It addresses St. Michael as the glorious prince of the heavenly host.
Right. A deeply militaristic royal title. And then it defines the opposition. We're told the warfare is against principalities and powers, against rulers of this world of darkness, and ultimately the leader of the proud angels, Lucifer.
Notice the deliberate use of hierarchical language there, though. Principalities and powers. That implies a structured, bureaucratic system of darkness.
A bureaucracy of evil.
Exactly. It paints a picture of an enemy that is not chaotic or feral, but organized, disciplined, and strategic. And a bureaucratic evil operates with logistics and patience.
Yeah.
Like that 100-year timeline Satan asked for.
Right, that requires patience.
It really does. And to understand the psychological weight of this conflict, we have to look at what this highly organized army is actually trying to capture. The text immediately defines the stakes.
Yeah, look at the phrasing used to describe what is being fought over. It says humanity was created immortal, made in his own image and likeness, and redeemed at a great price from the tyranny of Satan.
Redeemed at a great price.
That economic language completely changes the dynamic of the battlefield for me. In most apocalyptic scenarios we consume in pop culture, humanity is just collateral
Oh,
damage,
right.
right?
We're just the ants getting stepped on while the giant entities fight in the sky.
Exactly. But this text frames humanity as the absolute objective. It reads like a high stakes hostage negotiation, where the hostage is the most valuable asset on the board.
And framing humanity as the territorial objective, um, it explains the intensity of the conflict. I mean, if an army is fighting over a barren wasteland, their tactics might be careless or purely destructive.
Just blow it all up.
Right. But if they're fighting over a priceless, high-value asset, the tactics become incredibly precise and calculated. The text establishes humanity's immense worth right up front to justify the sheer scale of this cosmic war.
Because you don't mobilize a glorious prince of the heavenly host for something trivial.
You really don't.
Huh?
And as a psychological strategy, establishing that inherent worth, it arms the person praying with a sense of immense personal value.
It also arms them with a sense of historical precedent, which I found fascinating. Right after establishing the stakes, the prayer reminds St. Michael about a past victory.
Ah, yes, the reminder.
It says, "Fight this day the battle of the Lord, as already thou hast fought the leader of the proud angels, Lucifer, and his apostate host." It goes out of its way to explicitly state that Lucifer and his host were powerless to resist thee, nor was there place for them any longer in heaven.
It's essentially saying, we have the tape. We've seen you beat him.
Exactly.
That is a classic anchoring technique. Facing a cosmic, invisible threat is inherently terrifying for anybody. So the text grounds that terror in a framework of inevitable victory by demanding the person praying recall a time the enemy was utterly routed.
Because the logic is simple. The enemy is a known loser.
Right. He has already been physically expelled from the ultimate high ground of heaven. Establishing the past defeat is crucial before the text introduces the horrifying reality of the current situation.
Which leads to this massive contradiction that completely shifts the paradigm of the text for me. If Satan was already cast out, right? If he was utterly defeated and there's no place for them any longer in heaven, why is there still an active war?
It's a great question.
Why do we need the Prince of the Heavenly Host to come back down to the battlefield today?
Well, the battlefield has fundamentally changed. The war is no longer a localized clash in heaven. It has decentralized and moved to Earth.
So the environment shifted.
Exactly. And because the environment has changed, the enemy's tactics have evolved. I mean, a strategy that fails in one theater of war is rarely repeated in the next one. So the text pivots here to describe a completely different kind of warfare.
And the description of these new tactics completely flips our traditional understanding of demons. The text calls Satan that cruel ancient serpent and notes that he was cast into the abyss, but now he has taken courage.
He's emboldened.
Yeah, but here is the most terrifying part of the entire invocation for me. It says he has transformed into an angel of light.
The angel of light, that's key.
We usually picture the ruler of darkness as this monster hiding in the shadows, right? Horns, pitchforks, something biologically terrifying that triggers your fight or flight response. But an angel of light is a Trojan horse.
It represents the shift from brute force to ultimate deception. I mean, humans are biologically wired to trust light.
Well, for sure, light means safety.
Exactly. Light reveals danger. It provides warmth. It guides us. So by hijacking the very aesthetic of safety and righteousness, the enemy circumvents our human threat detection system entirely.
It's terrifying.
It is. If an army cannot breach a fortress by battering the walls, They disguise themselves as merchants and wait for the gates to be opened from the inside.
Wait, I have to stop you there and challenge the logic of the text a bit.
Okay, go for it.
If the enemy has shifted to being an angel of light, right, relying on intellectual seduction and trickery, why invoke a warrior with a sword to fight him?
Ah, I see what you mean.
Why call on the glorious prince of the heavenly host to fight what is essentially a philosophical or psychological battle? Wouldn't, like, a scholar or a detective be better suited to fight a liar?
That's a fair point, but in the framework of this theology, truth isn't merely an abstract concept or a passive idea.
Hmm.
Truth is an absolute piercing force. A sword is the perfect metaphor for cutting through a complex, tangled web of deception. When an enemy wraps themselves in layers of false light, you don't debate them, you sever the illusion.
So you just cut the knot.
Exactly. The invocation brings a warrior's absolute clarity to an environment deliberately clouded by psychological manipulation.
And that clouding effect is detailed so vividly in the source material. It says this angel of light wanders the earth to blot out the name of God and to seize souls.
And then the imagery shifts again.
Yeah, it becomes a wicked dragon pouring out a most impure flood. And the flood is made of the venom of his malice poured over men of depraved mind and corrupt heart.
Right.
When it lists the specific weapons of this flood, it names the spirit of lying, of impiety, of blasphemy, and the pestilent breath of impurity.
Observe the nature of those weapons, though. Lying, impiety, blasphemy, impurity. None of these are kinetic or physical weapons.
Or ideas.
Yes, the venom and the pestilent breath are intellectual and moral pollutants. It operates like a toxic gas seeping into an enclosed space. The warfare is entirely psychological, targeting the cognitive framework of humanity itself.
The text actually explicitly states the enemy seduces the whole world.
Right, and seduction is a slow, calculated process. It's designed to make the victim desire their own corruption. The whole goal is to make the venom taste sweet.
So it tricks you into drinking the poison because you are convinced it's water.
Exactly.
And this strategy of seductive pollution isn't just aimed at random individuals wandering the earth. This is where the Pope Leo XIII context really hits hard. The text takes a highly specific, very dark turn here.
It certainly does.
It moves from talking about the whole world being seduced to detailing an incredibly brazen institutional infiltration. It claims these crafty enemies have filled the church, the spouse of the Immaculate Lamb, with gall and bitterness.
Gall and bitterness function as corrosive agents. They poison a structure from the inside out, eroding trust, unity, and moral authority over time, like that 100-year timeline we talked about.
Exactly. It makes perfect sense with the 100-year request to destroy the church, and it goes much further than just making things bitter. The text states they have laid impious hands on her most sacred possessions.
Yeah.
And then we get what I think is the most shocking line of the entire document. It says, "In the holy place itself, where the see of Holy Peter and the chair of truth has been set up as the light of the world, they have raised the throne of their abominable impiety."
To fully grasp the magnitude of that statement, we really have to understand the terminology. The See of Holy Peter and the Chair of Truth, these represent the absolute apex of the institution's command structure.
The very top.
Right. They are the geographic and theological heart of the faith. The text is alleging that the enemy hasn't just breached the outer courtyard, they have marched directly into the central command center and installed their own command structure right on top of the original one.
Which is wild. Isn't it incredibly surprising that a prayer, something inherently designed to be a sacred, reverent text used by the faithful, openly admits that the very center of the faith is deeply vulnerable?
It really is.
It doesn't sugarcoat the reality of corruption, it embraces it. It admits the institution is under active, successful siege.
And the absolute lack of denial is its greatest psychological strength. The text refuses to pretend the institution is immune to that impure flood. It unpacks the tactical military logic behind targeting the holy place.
Yeah, the source material explains the motive explicitly. It says, with the iniquitous design that when the pastor has been struck, the sheep may be scattered.
Strike the pastors, scatter the sheep. I mean, that is just a textbook decapitation strategy right there.
Take out the leader.
Exactly. It is the most efficient way to break an opposing force. You don't need to fight every individual soldier on the battlefield if you can sever the head of the command structure. Without leadership, the structure just dissolves into chaos and confusion.
So, by acknowledging this profound vulnerability within the text of the prayer itself, it's doing something really clever. It provides a crucial framework for the person praying.
How so?
It essentially states that any institutional crisis, any internal corruption at the highest levels, is not proof that the divine has abandoned the structure, but rather direct evidence of this precise demonic infiltration that Pope Leo foresaw.
Yes. It provides an explanation for structural failure that actually preserves the core belief. It tells the reader, if you see the throne of impiety sitting in the chair of truth, do not lose your mind, because we mapped out this exact battle plan.
Right. Don't panic. This was expected.
It frames internal decay as a temporary tactical advance by the enemy in an ongoing, much larger war. It manages the expectations of the faithful, fortifying them against the despair of seeing their sacred institutions compromised.
So the stakes are incredibly high. Humanity is the prize territory. The enemy is a shape-shifting tactician using the disguise of an angel of light to deploy an impure flood of psychological venom.
And the central command structure is highly vulnerable to a decapitation strike.
Exactly. With all of that established, how does the text instruct an individual to respond? Because it doesn't just outline the apocalypse and leave you hanging, right? There's a very specific counteroffensive.
There is. The tone of the text dramatically shifts here from outlining the horror of the siege to a rhythmic, demanding formula of action. It stops describing the darkness and begins issuing commands.
It calls out to St. Michael again. Arise then, O invincible prince. It asks him to bring help, to pray to the God of peace to put Satan under our feet.
And it specifically asks to make him captive in the abyss, that he may no longer seduce the nations. Just put him back in the box where he belongs.
Right, but notice the structural mechanics of how this counterattack is actually executed. It introduces a highly formalized call and response format.
Yeah, the text switches to these V&R markers, versicle and response. The leader speaks a line, the group replies.
It says, behold the cross of the Lord. Be scattered, ye hostile powers. And the response is, the Lion of the tribe of Judah has conquered, the Root of David.
Then it continues. Let thy mercies be upon us, O Lord, and as we have hoped in thee.
It concludes with this final plea to God the Father, asking for clemency through the intercession of Mary the Virgin Immaculate and Mother and St. Michael to help against these unclean spirits ruining souls.
This call and response acts as a profound psychological grounding mechanism. I mean, think about it. You have just spent the first half of the invocation visualizing a venomous dragon installing a throne of impiety in the holiest place on earth.
Yeah, that is a chaotic, destabilizing visualization.
Very much so.
Yeah.
But the call and response imposes immediate cognitive order. It's rhythmic, it's declarative, saying the Lion of the tribe of Judah has conquered, leaves absolutely no room for intellectual debate or seductive trickery.
It's an anchor of certainty dropped into a sea of confusion.
Exactly.
I understand the rhythm of the call and response, but we have to talk about the very first instruction provided in the source material.
Oh, right.
Before it even gets into the glorious princes, the venomous dragons, or the tactical sieges, there is a single line of instruction sitting at the very top of the text. It dictates how the entire tool is supposed to be used.
Repeat this prayer 40 times to reap the benefits.
Repeating this massive, dense, multi-paragraph text 40 times.
It's a lot.
If you sit down and read this out loud with actual focus and intention 40 times, you are committing hours of your day. It requires serious, sustained physical and mental endurance. It reminds me of a rigorous martial arts kata.
A martial arts kata is actually the perfect analogy to understand the mechanism at work here. Think about how a kata operates on the human nervous system. When you first learn to block a punch, you have to think about the angle of your arm, the distribution of your weight, the timing.
Right, it's very analytical.
But if someone attacks you in an alleyway, that analytical process is far too slow. You will get hit before your brain computes the geometry of the block. By repeating the motion 10,000 times, you bypass the conscious analytical brain. You embed the block directly into your nervous system.
It becomes an automatic reflex.
Exactly. The text is demanding a cognitive kata.
It's forging spiritual muscle memory.
By demanding 40 repetitions, the text forces the individual into an intense state of focused endurance. At first, you're analyzing the words, but by the 20th or 30th time, the words bypass the conscious mind, which is the exact part of the mind the angel of light is trying to trick with its impure flood of lying and impiety.
Wow, that makes so much sense.
The repetition embeds the absolute certainty of victory into the subconscious. It transforms the individual from a passive victim watching a cosmic war happen above them into an active participant.
So you aren't just sitting there asking for a shield to be placed over you. Through the sheer effort, the time, and the endurance required to complete the 40 repetitions, you are actively forging the shield yourself.
Yes, the sheer discipline required to complete that task is the actual counteroffensive against the gall and bitterness. It demands absolute, unwavering focus in an environment that text explicitly describes as being actively flooded with distraction, seduction, and deception.
Well, we have journeyed deep into the architecture of the source material today. This invocation and the incredible story of Pope Leo XIII that inspired it is far more than a simple blessing or a historical curiosity.
It really is a comprehensive worldview.
It outlines a high-stakes cosmic war over human territory. It emphasizes the terrifying, deceptive nature of an enemy that utilizes intellectual pollution over physical force. It frankly acknowledges the extreme vulnerability of sacred institutions to decapitation strikes. And it prescribes rigorous, demanding repetition as the ultimate cognitive armor.
It serves as a stark reminder that simply having knowledge of the battlefield is entirely insufficient. The text insists that understanding the threat of the angel of light must be paired with intense, disciplined action to actually survive the siege.
We just spent a lot of time analyzing this intense psychological armor and the ancient threat of an impure flood of lies. It makes you wonder how this specific framework applies to our physical reality today.
Right.
In an era dominated by algorithmic echo chambers, deepfakes, and the constant barrage of information manipulation, we stare into literal screens of light all day long. Are we currently swimming in the exact impure flood of psychological seduction this ancient text and Pope Leo were trying to warn us about? Think about that. If you close your eyes and picture like the opening crawl of a massive cosmic blockbuster movie, you probably imagine this deep voiceover setting the stage for some universe-ending war.
Right, definitely. Like galaxies hanging in the balance, celestial beings, all of that.
Exactly. You've got ancient evils and these massive stakes. And the whole point of that imagery is to make you, the audience, feel incredibly small, but also completely absorbed by the immense scale of it all.
Yeah, it forces a total perspective shift. You were just immediately pulled out of your day-to-day life,
Right.
and you're dropped right onto a battlefield where, honestly, the parameters of reality itself are being contested. You have to know exactly what kind of conflict you are walking into.
Well, and that's the thing. Today, we're looking at a document that reads exactly like that opening crawl, only it's not from a Hollywood writer's room.
No, not at all.
It's a highly specific, really intense text known as the Invocation of Saint Michael the Archangel. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this single document and explore its incredibly vivid depiction of the ultimate apocalyptic showdown between Saint Michael and the dragon, which maps right onto that intense end times imagery from the book of Revelation, right? The cosmic warfare.
Yeah, it draws heavily on that exact biblical tradition. But um, we should probably establish up front how this document is actually intended to be used.
Oh, right. Because it's not just a story.
Exactly. I mean, we are analyzing it today to understand its powerful imagery and its underlying mechanics, sure. But the author didn't write this as some passive reflection. It is framed as literal, active engagement in what it calls, and this is a direct quote, terrible warfare against the rulers of this world of darkness.
Wow. Terrible warfare.
It reads less like a poem and much more like a tactical briefing for a soldier.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the active use is probably the most striking element right out of the gate for me. The instructions attached to this invocation actually tell the reader to repeat it 40 times to, quote, reap the benefits.
Right. 40 times.
You don't just read it once, close the book, and put it away. It's an action. But, if you're listening right now, you might be wondering why this matters to you at all. Why should anyone care about this ancient-sounding end-times battle between angels and dragons?
Which is a fair question.
Right. Well, according to this text, humanity, and specifically the souls of men, that is the ultimate prize. We are literally the territory they are fighting over.
Yeah, and to really grasp the mechanics of that warfare, we first have to look at the generals leading the charge. You can't really understand a war without understanding who is commanding the forces.
Right. And we have our lead protagonist right at the top, Saint Michael the Archangel. And the titles he's given here are just massive. He is the glorious prince of the heavenly hosts and the invincible prince.
Yeah, he is definitely not presented as an underdog in this fight.
No, not at all. He's presented as this heavyweight victor right from the start.
Because the author is deliberately establishing an unblemished resume for him. The invocation explicitly reminds the reader that Saint Michael has already fought the leader of the proud angels, Lucifer, and his apostate host,
And one?
and won decisively. The mechanics of that first battle are super important here. It wasn't a close call. The text says the enemy was rendered utterly powerless to resist, leaving them with absolutely no place in heaven. So, St. Michael is an undefeated general.
But wait, I'm struggling with this a bit. Because if St. Michael already defeated Lucifer so decisively and, like, kicked him completely out of heaven, it kind of begs the question, why is this prayer even necessary?
Right.
Like, why are we talking about a current active battle if the war was already won?
Well, because while the battle for heaven was won, the battlefield simply shifted. And that brings us right back to the prize you mentioned earlier, humanity.
Okay, so Earth is the new front line.
Exactly. And the text assigns this immeasurable, deeply specific value to the human soul by describing it in three distinct parts. It says man was created immortal, made in God's own image and likeness, and redeemed at a great price.
I want to pause on that for a second. That three-part description is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just saying, oh, humans are nice, we should save them. It's saying we have a literal divine architecture. We are immortal. We are a mirror image of the divine. And this is the big one. Somebody paid a massive price to buy us back from the, quote, tyranny of Satan.
Precisely. By laying out those three attributes, the document is essentially outlining an economy of spiritual warfare. Humanity isn't just collateral damage in a fight between celestial beings. We are a high-value asset.
Yeah.
We are something that required an immense transaction, that great price, to secure.
So, to use an analogy, it feels like a heist movie where humanity is the priceless artifact sitting in the center of the vault.
I like that analogy.
But that raises a big question for me about our role in all of this. If we are this incredibly valuable asset, does the text imply we are just completely helpless? Like, are we just the diamond sitting in the vault, just hoping the invincible prince shows up in time to stop the heist?
You know, it's really easy to read it that way at first glance because it does acknowledge a profound vulnerability to this tyranny. But if we step back and look at the meta-structure of the document.
So 40 repetitions.
Exactly. That specific instruction to repeat the invocation 40 times suggests a very different mechanism. The very act of speaking this text is positioned as humanity's active participation in the defense.
So it's less like calling a dispatcher for air support and just waiting, and more like a civilian being given the actual codes to activate a massive ancient defense grid.
Yes.
The repetition punching in the code 40 times that is our active role.
That's a highly effective way to think about it.
Yeah.
You aren't just sitting in the vault. You are actually operating the locking mechanism.
Yeah.
But to understand why the defense grid needs to be activated in the first place, we have to look at the antagonist's evolution. Because as you pointed out, if St. Michael won the first round, why is there still a threat?
Right, and this is where the text gets really dark. It describes that cruel, ancient serpent who was cast down into the abyss, which again ties right back to that Book of Revelation end times imagery of the dragon. But he didn't just stay down there. The primeval enemy actually dusted himself off.
And what's fascinating here is the emphasis on the enemy's resilience. The author uses a very deliberate phrase. It states that the primeval enemy has taken courage.
Taken courage. That is such a wild way to describe the devil. It implies a recovery, like a regrouping.
Yeah, it's not just mindless rage, it's calculated.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The invocation claims this enemy wanders the earth, but not in the form of some grotesque, terrifying monster. It says he is transformed into an angel of light. I honestly think that might be the most chilling concept in the entire document. Why frame the the cosmic dragon of the end times, as something luminous and appealing instead of like a traditional fire-breathing monster?
Because the author is diagnosing a fundamental shift in military strategy. Think about it. A monster that breathes fire is an obvious threat.
Right, if you see a dragon, you fight it or you run away from it.
Exactly. But if an enemy approaches you, radiating light, warmth, and apparent goodness, you open the door. You welcome it in.
Oh, man.
The text is outlining a campaign of deep deception. The enemy realized that brute cosmic force didn't work against St. Michael in heaven, so the strategy on Earth has shifted entirely to psychological and spiritual disinformation.
That completely changes the nature of the warfare. The weapons aren't physical fire anymore. The document actually mentions a flood of malice, but the components of that flood are fascinating. It lists the spirit of lying, of impiety, of blasphemy, and the pestilent breath of impurity. It is an entirely psychological siege.
And look at the tactical objective of that disinformation campaign. The goal isn't just to cause chaos for the sake of chaos.
Right, there's an end game.
Exactly. The text argues this multitude of wicked spirits invades the earth to blot out the name of God, to seduce the whole world, and ultimately to seize upon, slay, and cast into eternal perdition souls. Deception is merely the tool. Capturing that high-value asset, the human soul, is the primary objective.
But this deception, this whole angel of light routine, the author doesn't portray it as just some vague, free-floating bad vibe out in the world. The text describes a highly localized, coordinated attack on a very specific institution. Like, the dragon isn't wandering aimlessly.
No, the battlefield narrows significantly here. It moves from the abstract concept of the whole world to a physical, structural target, the church, which the text refers to as the spouse of the Immaculate Lamb.
And the language describing this attack is incredibly intense. It claims these wicked spirits have filled the church with gall and bitterness and have laid impious hands on her most sacred possessions. I mean, it doesn't sound like a philosophical disagreement. It sounds like a hostile takeover of a physical space.
It is a hostile takeover, and it targets the absolute nerve center of that space. The invocation specifically names the See of Holy Peter and the Chair of Truth.
Okay, so that's getting very specific.
Yeah. For context, these terms refer directly to the seat of the Pope, the central teaching authority and foundational core of the institution. The author is claiming that the enemy hasn't just attacked the outer walls. They have literally raised a throne of their abominable impiety right inside the most sacred central location.
So they bypass the perimeter completely and set up their own command center right in the middle of the sanctuary. And the text actually explains the tactical logic behind this kind of invasion. It says they do this with the iniquitous design that when the pastor has been struck, the sheep may be scattered. Now, to me, that sounds exactly like a military decapitation strike.
It really does.
You take out the central command structure, the leader, and the rest of the army just completely dissolves.
It is the exact sociological mechanism of a decapitation strike, just applied to spiritual warfare. If you want to ruin the entire flock, you don't go after every individual sheep one by one.
Right. That would take forever.
It takes too long and expends way too much energy. You target the shepherd. You target the central pillar of authority.
Because if the central foundation, that chair of truth, falls to this angel of light deception, what happens to the everyday person? What happens to you and me?
According to the logic of the text, the everyday person becomes completely unmoored. Without that central grounding truth, the masses are scattered and left entirely vulnerable to that psychological disinformation we talked about earlier. The pestilent breath of impurity can just sweep through the scattered flock with zero resistance.
It's a systemic collapse. If the central locking mechanism of the vault fails, the priceless artifact is just sitting there for the taking.
Exactly.
So at this point in the document, things look incredibly bleak. The dragon has infiltrated the sanctuary, set up a dark throne, the sheep are scattering. But this is exactly where the text executes a massive pivot. It stops laying out the grim situation report and initiates a desperate counteroffensive.
Right. The language shifts abruptly from description to a direct commanding plea. The reader is instructed to call out, "Arise then, O invincible prince."
Arise. It's such a visceral, active command. So what does this all mean? When the reader is activating this defense grid, repeating this 40 times, what is the ultimate goal? What does a successful counterattack actually look like in this apocalyptic scenario?
The stated objective is threefold and very definitive. The text asks Saint Michael to intervene with the God of peace to do three things. Put Satan definitively underfoot, completely vanquish the dragon, and crucially, again, make him captive in the abyss, that he may no longer seduce the nations.
Make him captive in the abyss. See, we are right back to that massive end times revelation imagery, the dragon in the abyss. It's about violently locking the vault door on the intruder.
It really is.
And the mechanics of how the text structures this counterattack are brilliant. Toward the end of the document, it breaks into this highly structured back and forth dialogue. You have lines marked with a V and lines marked with an R.
Right. That indicates a versicle in response, the very traditional liturgical mechanism.
Yeah.
And there's a profound psychological reason for that structure. Yeah, it forces a rhythm. It requires an initiator to call out a line and a respondent or a whole congregation to answer. It turns a solitary plea into a unified rhythmic march.
It builds psychological resilience through chanting, like an army marching in step.
Exactly.
And the imagery in that specific response section is incredibly triumphant. The versicle calls out, "Behold the cross of the Lord, be scattered, ye hostile powers." And the required response is, "The Lion of the tribe of Judah has conquered, the Root of David." It is marshaling this massive ancient authority to combat the deception.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is really pulling out all the stops for this final push. The defense grid isn't just relying on St. Michael anymore.
What do you mean?
In the concluding section, the invocation summons a final overarching layer of defense. It calls upon the clemency of God the Father, and it specifically asks for the intercession of Mary, referring to her as ever Virgin Immaculate and our Mother, standing right alongside the glorious St. Michael.
Okay, so it's forming a completely unified front. It's not just one archangel. It's a coalition of celestial heavyweights brought in to push back against these unclean spirits.
Exactly. The text recognizes the immense scale of the threat, the, quote, injury of the human race and the ruin of souls. And it answers that threat by overwhelming the battlefield with an alliance of intercessors. The mechanism of the prayer is designed to make the reader feel backed by an unstoppable force.
That makes so much sense. So let's trace this entire journey back for a second. We started by looking at a document that outlines a literal cosmic war. We explored the expulsion of Lucifer from heaven by an undefeated Saint Michael.
Right.
We analyzed how that enemy didn't surrender but transformed, taking courage and returning to Earth as an angel of light, utilizing advanced psychological disinformation.
The deception.
Right. We discussed his tactical decapitation strike, targeting the very center of the Sea of Holy Peter to scatter the masses. And we saw how this all culminates in a rhythmic 40-repetition battle cry, a structured ritual designed to form a united celestial front and lock the dragon back into the abyss. I mean, it is a staggering piece of strategic and spiritual literature.
It truly is. But before we wrap up this analysis, there was one single, very easily overlooked word in the text that fundamentally changes how we might interpret this entire war.
Oh, what word?
When the invocation makes that final plea for St. Michael to defeat the dragon, the exact phrasing is, "Do thou again make him captive in the abyss."
Wait, again?
Yes. That one word introduces a deeply unsettling concept. It suggests a cyclical nature to this cosmic warfare.
Because he was already captured once.
Think about it. The dragon was already cast into the abyss once after that initial decisive battle in heaven. But somehow, according to the internal logic of this text, he taken courage and managed to escape. He broke out to wander the world as an angel of light.
Wow. If he has to be captured and cast into the abyss again, that implies the abyss isn't permanently secure.
Exactly. And that leaves us with a profound, almost philosophical question to ponder about the nature of this document. Is the ultimate purpose of this invocation to finally, permanently win a war? Or does the text imply that this cosmic battle of the souls of men is a war that never truly ends?
Oh, man.
Are we, as humanity, perpetually living in the terrifying space between the dragon's escapes?
That reframes everything we just talked about. It means the defense grid isn't something you activate once to solve the problem forever. It's a mechanism you have to keep running because the vault is never truly permanently secure. The heist is always either happening or being planned.
Precisely.
What an incredible, heavy thought to walk away with. Well, thank you for joining us as we unpack the mechanics and the mystery of this cosmic battlefield. We will catch you on the next deep dive.